Something happened at your bird feeder this morning, and you probably missed it. Not because you weren't paying attention. You could have been standing right there, coffee in hand, watching the whole thing unfold, and you still would have missed it. Because the warning your bird sent out wasn't a sound. It wasn't a flash of wings or a sudden scatter. It was something far older, far stranger, and it happened in a frequency of silence that the human brain simply wasn't built to notice. There was a predator nearby. Your birds knew it. And they told each other. They just didn't tell you. If you've spent any real time watching birds, really watching them, not just glancing out the window, you've probably noticed moments that felt off. 1 second the feeder is alive with color and noise. Chickadees squabbling, sparrows jostling for position, maybe a pair of cardinals working their way through the sunflower seeds. And then, nothing. The feeder is empty. The yard is still. And you have absolutely no idea what just happened. Most people assume the birds just got spooked. A car door slammed. A dog barked in the distance. And sometimes, sure, that's exactly it. But sometimes, often, what you just witnessed was something remarkable. A coordinated, split-second communication system that has been evolving for tens of millions of years. A system so sophisticated it involves not just sound, but body posture, eye movement, and something researchers have only recently begun to understand. A specific kind of meaningful silence. Your backyard birds are not random little creatures pecking around and hoping for the best. They are constantly reading the world and quietly reporting back to each other. And once you learn to see it, you will never look at your feeder the same way again. Let's start with what most people do know, or at least have a feeling for, before we get to what almost nobody knows. Birds do make alarm calls. You've heard them. That sharp, almost mechanical chick from a chickadee. The rapid, frantic chirping that erupts when a neighborhood cat slinks through the yard. These are real, coded messages. And ornithologists have spent decades decoding them. But here's what nobody tells you about those calls. They aren't all the same. And the differences aren't accidental. A chickadee making alarm calls for a ground predator, a cat, a fox, a snake, uses a very different pattern than the one it uses for a hawk. The call for the ground threat is loud, repetitive, easy to locate. It's almost like the bird wants to be found, because it's also a mobbing signal, a way of rallying nearby birds to come harass the intruder until it leaves. But the call for an aerial predator, a hawk, an owl, a falcon, that one is different in a way that's almost eerie. It's high-pitched, thin, and tapers off in a way that makes it nearly impossible to locate the source. The bird is broadcasting a warning while hiding itself in plain sound. Researchers have confirmed that this isn't just one species doing this. Cardinals do it. Robins do it. Sparrows do it. Even species that don't usually share the same language respond to each other's aerial predator calls, because when a hawk is overhead, species cooperation isn't optional. And that matters to you as a backyard watcher, because the next time your birds suddenly vanish and the yard goes quiet, look up first. Now here's where it gets genuinely strange. And this is the part that most bird guides never bother to mention. Some of the most important information birds share with each other has no sound at all. Before the alarm calls, before the scatter, before anything that would register to your human ears, there is a moment of what researchers call alert posture. And it's happening constantly, in ways most of us have never been trained to see. Watch a bird at your feeder closely enough and you'll notice that they don't just eat. They eat, pause, lift the head, scan, then eat again. That rhythm is not random. It's a form of distributed surveillance. Each bird is sampling the environment, and when one bird's posture changes, when the head comes up and stays up, others notice immediately. No sound required. The posture itself is the message. Upright body, feathers slightly compressed, eyes wide and fixed in one direction. To another bird at that feeder, that body language reads as clearly as a neon sign. Something is wrong in that direction. And here's the fascinating part. Studies on songbird flocks have found that this visual alarm can ripple through an entire group in under half a second. One bird stiffens, then the next, then the next. It's like watching a very fast, very quiet game of telephone, except the message being passed is run. You've seen this. You've just never had a name for it. That frozen moment right before the feeder empties? That's not coincidence. That's communication. But the system goes even deeper than that, and this is where it starts to feel almost organized. Many backyard bird species, particularly in mixed flocks, operate what biologists call a sentinel system. While other birds feed, one individual takes up a high, exposed position and keeps watch. They don't eat. They don't preen. They just watch. And the birds below trust that sentinel enough to drop their own vigilance slightly. They spend more time with their heads down, eating, because they've effectively outsourced their security to the bird on the high branch. In your yard, that bird is almost always a tufted titmouse or a chickadee. They are disproportionately likely to be the ones doing the watching. And when you think about it, those are also the species most likely to be the first ones to come to a new feeder and the first to return after a scare. That's not boldness for its own sake. That's a functional role. They are the scouts, the early warning system. But here's what nobody tells you about the sentinel. They are not being selfless. Research suggests they get a social benefit from the role. Other birds are more likely to forage near a known sentinel. There's a kind of trust that gets built, a reputation for reliability. In nature, being the watchman has its own rewards. So the next time you see one small bird perched up high, completely still, while the feeder below is full of activity, that's not a bird that got left out. That's the bird in charge. Now let's talk about crows, because if chickadees are the scouts, crows are the intelligence network. Crows don't just respond to predators. They track them, they remember them, and they pass that information on. You may have heard about the famous research from the University of Washington, the study where researchers wore a specific mask while trapping crows, and the crows responded not just to those individuals, but to anyone wearing that same mask for years afterward. The crows had shared what a dangerous face looked like, and that information spread through the local crow population like a file being uploaded to a network. What's less well known is that crows also share predator information in real time, through something called a mob assembly call that functions almost like a town emergency alert. When a crow spots an owl roosting in the neighborhood, that call will pull in crows from a surprisingly wide area. And those crows will remember that owl's location and often return to check the same spot for days afterward. And here's why this matters to you and your backyard. The smaller songbirds know to listen to the crows. When crows start moving through a neighborhood, making that specific, rhythmic cawing, not random background noise but the rapid, repeated mob call, your cardinals and sparrows hear it. And they respond to it. They go quiet, they go still, or they leave. Even though the crows aren't giving an alarm meant for them. In a very real sense, crows are running a neighborhood watch service. And the rest of the yard birds are paying attention, even when you aren't. One last piece before we get to the part that I think will stay with you. The cardinal, that brilliant flash of red that so many of us love, turns out to be one of the most sensitive early warning birds you can have in your yard. And not just because of their calls. Cardinals have a specific freeze behavior researchers have documented in response to aerial threats that is different from other species. Instead of flushing immediately, a cardinal will often drop slightly, compress its feathers, and hold perfectly still, sometimes for 20 to 40 seconds. The effect is almost counterintuitive. A bright red bird, sitting frozen in the open. But that stillness is actually serving a very specific purpose. Motion, not color, is what triggers the strike reflex in most raptors. The cardinal is betting that being still is safer than being fast. And here is the extraordinary part. Other birds at the feeder watch the cardinal. When the cardinal freezes, they freeze too. The cardinal's stillness is its own kind of broadcast. No sound, just a signal in the shape of a bird choosing not to move. Here is the thing I want you to really sit with. Everything we've talked about, the posture changes, the thin aerial alarm calls, the sentinel on the high branch, the crow's neighborhood alert, the cardinal's perfect stillness, all of it is happening in your backyard. Right now? Probably every single day. But there's a bigger truth underneath all of it. Your birds are not reacting to a world you can fully see. They are perceiving a layer of reality that is simply not available to human senses. They're detecting the shadow of a hawk while it's still too far away for your eyes to catch it. They're reading the body language of a bird 30 feet away that's too small and too far for you to interpret. They're responding to a crow's call and immediately calculating threat level, direction, and species, in less time than it takes you to hear the sound and register that it's a crow. They are living in a richer, faster, more dangerous version of the same backyard you look out at every morning. And for a fraction of a second, right before the feeder empties and the yard goes still, They are all reading the same message, all tuned to the same frequency. One organism, briefly, made of many birds. That moment of perfect, coordinated silence that you've wondered about your whole life? Now you know what it is. It's not nothing. It's everything. I want you to try something this week. The next time your feeder goes completely quiet, don't just assume it's nothing. Don't go back inside. Just stand still for a minute. Watch the bird that went still first. Watch where its head is pointing. Look in that direction. Up, if it was an aerial warning. Low and slow, if the birds scattered to the bushes. You might not see the hawk. You might not spot the cat. But there's something almost meditative about joining your birds in that moment of collective attention, about tuning your own senses, just for a second, to their frequency. They've been trying to show you their world this whole time. And now you have a little more of the language. If this opens something up for you, if you're seeing your backyard differently right now, drop a comment and tell me what you've noticed. What's the strangest moment of sudden quiet you've ever experienced at your feeder? I read every single one. And if you want to go deeper into the secret life of backyard birds, there's a lot more where this came from. Subscribe Pet Brain Signal if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.